I saw a video on TikTok. It was a lady who was in a marriage, has kids, and was mentioning looking to divorce her husband. Husband was described as great, in my opinion. Good husband. Seems to be doing what's required, seems to be fulfilling duties in terms of, provision, protection, the whole shebang. Kids seem to be in line, I'm sure, both of them chipping in, doing what's required. That's what it seems like. It seems like he was, and he is somebody that is decent, good, for a husband in terms of just those aspects that men should be, involved in, making sure that things are in check when it comes to the household, in that regard. But when I played the video, I had to play it once and then a couple more times. I had to play it on another device. I had to play it on multiple devices, actually, just to make sure that I was hearing what I thought I heard. But at the same time, I was thinking, nah, let me check again. And it turned out that, yeah, on all the devices that I used, she was saying exactly the same thing. And I was shocked. Just based on the fact that I was thinking, okay, this guy was described as good, disciplined, good father. Everything seemed, based on what she was saying, was good. So I was thinking, what's the main issue here? What is the main issue where you're looking to leave a marriage, break the home up, and potentially go back into the dating life and dating world and see what you can get that is better than what you've already described as good? And there were no issues in terms of him character-wise. No allusions to any kind of, any issues that are negative, basically, from a physical maybe standpoint. And just basically just describing a person that seemed to know what he has to do. But she mentioned stuff like she doesn't feel herself in terms of being herself. She doesn't feel that she can be herself. But then I thought, when was that? Was that before the marriage? Was that during? Because if you're going to get married, or if you're going to do anything with anyone, both parties have to understand each other's character, how people come across, the nature that you both are bringing. So to want to break up a marriage because you can't be yourself, I want to know exactly, because she didn't allude to it enough, but I want to know exactly what herself was or is. Because as a man, generally, from what I've seen, I've had a two-parent household. Father was levels in terms of the way he was, right? And I look at and think, okay, so what are good men supposed to do if they're doing what's required when it comes to making sure that the kids are in check, making sure that things are in check with household stability and stuff in that regard, right? Obviously, you have to make sure you're tending to your wife in certain instances, her needs when it comes to making sure that, firstly, she has to make sure that she's in a good emotional state for her own self. That's her job. She has to make sure that she's doing that, right? She has to make sure, especially if the house is in a good shape, she has to make sure that she's doing things for her own well-being. And then obviously the man has to, try and assist in that. But it seems there's a lack of understanding of what men generally are still. After all these years that we've seen online, so many conversations about men, women, it's getting to a point where it's like, so is there still a lack of understanding of what generally men should be and what they should be doing? Because it gets to a point where you've got to question it and think, it's like the good person, the person who is doing the duties that are required as a man, is not enough if a woman says she doesn't feel like she's being herself, or she doesn't feel like she's being loved in a certain way. So what does that guy feel? Does he feel that he's being loved in a certain way? Or is he just happy wife, happy life mentality? And he's just going to accept things that he may not be keen on. It seems the good man perspective is not enough. I mentioned my dad earlier. It seems a man who was, from the days of more traditional aspects of marriage and men, it seems that is not good enough, particularly from the rhetoric online. It seems that aspect is not good enough. If things are in check, it seems the emotional side, that has to be on him as well, where he has to now tend to that, especially if it seems the good aspect of the man and men is not enough from all the things that men generally should be doing. And if he's covering that, that's not enough. So there are issues in certain relationships, not because sometimes the guy is incapable or he's not a good fit or he's not, doing what's required. It's just sometimes the woman and the things that she looks at that she wants him to do is not generally something that maybe should be his duty. Like I said earlier, he should make sure that things are in a good state with the family, kids, himself, and also her. But the emotional side that she goes through, these kinds of thoughts of wanting to leave a marriage based on the fact that she's not herself and maybe she doesn't feel that she's loved in a certain way. What does this guy have to now do in that regard? The emotional side is something that is a feeling, because I guarantee you, if she leaves this marriage, or people who have that mentality leave the marriage, there is a chance that it will be even tougher to find somebody that covers all the good characteristics that a man should be doing in a marriage. The emotional side is something that, all right, look at this. Some men do have certain capabilities when it comes to tapping into certain sides, just naturally. But then there's also certain men, their capabilities are more around making sure that things are good within the home, making sure that good happenings are happening within the kids, within the generality of how the vibe should be. The sort of transactional nature, the sort of compromise that takes place. Like men that are doing that are making sure that that's taking place. So the emotional side of things, why does it seem that the woman, unfortunately, is in a way now looking at a man and saying, all the stuff that you have is good, but it's not enough. I want you to do certain things for me on the ability for me to be myself and the emotional side. When the emotional side is something that it goes through phases. This is, in my opinion, a phase. She wants a certain type of person to woo her, I think. I think she wants that fanciful view also of marriage, where it's similar to what you see in the films and the books, where there's edge. Like she wants a guy with a bit more edge, a bit more, I would say, even, that kind of spontaneity where it has this romance kind of aspect to it. Okay, you can request that. But at the same time, there are going to be men who are supposed to be doing what's required and making sure that the aspects of provision is covered and the aspects of making sure that everything else is covered. But then the emotional side is something that I said earlier, he has to be involved in, but it has to be a point where the woman has to make sure that she is doing what's required for her own state, and to look at things realistically and think, is it worth breaking up a potential marriage because I'm in this stage of feeling like this? Because at the end of the day, I think it gets to a point where the issues within marriages and the issues within the reasons why marriages disintegrate a lot of the time is because of these kinds of feelings at the time. It's like there's not a look at the long-term aspects of where you could be thinking down the line. Like you could have a whole different point of view because this point is a phase. Making a rash or a big decision like this to affect the whole dynamic of the family, the kids and everything, doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem fair based on the fact that you've not described something that firstly can't be resolved, because she did mention that she was doing counseling. She's went to a counselor, but I think that's based on what she wants. I think he's just having to go and just say, okay, fine, she's having these feelings and thoughts. I'm here to try and support it. But that solution didn't come to any kind of, positive conclusion based on the video. So I'm looking at it, trying to find the answers, and is a few things that I think, incorporate why this is an issue. It gets to a point where the good guy who is supposed to be doing what's required is not good enough. And it gets to a point where you have to question, what else does the guy have to do, based on the fact that if he's covering the things that generally men should be covering, that's what he should be doing. He's covered. He's doing what's required. The emotional side needs to be, as much as possible, looked into, but also checked off by her. He has to check off his emotional side too. But at the same time, they both have to come to an understanding that what's the importance between us two far outweighs the phases that we may go through emotionally. It far outweighs it. The long-term prospect of us being together, us building, us making sure that when we get older, we're making it easier on ourselves. So we're planning that now to then make that transition as we get older. Because when you get older, it's not going to be easier per se, physically sometimes. So to want to leave something and hope to go back in the dating world, in this current dating world, and think you're going to get something better potentially, is dangerous. Because it's basically saying it's not enough. You're good. You're doing what's required in aspects for the kids, for the relationship, in terms of making sure that provision is done, but that's not enough. I need you to do X, Y, and God knows what. That pertains to me having a certain emotional fulfillment and me being myself. Whatever that means, me being myself. So you weren't yourself before? How did it get to the point where you're in a marriage and not yourself? Things like that seem like a phase, seem like something that can easily be looked at and corrected. Because to not be yourself, what is he doing that's preventing you from doing that? But I guarantee it's something that is not as big as it could be. I don't think it is, because when you hear what she was describing, it was more about the stuff that's in her head at this moment, which seems confused. It seems, okay, he's good, but it's not enough because I'm bored. I'm not being fulfilled with him as a person, because there's no kind of, it's not excitement per se, but it's more, I'm not getting this kind of, these butterflies in my stomach for him anymore. I'm not getting that kind of way that I want or what I think should be. But these are all feelings that are not important when you have your day-to-day aspects of living in a marriage. And then you have your compromise, then you have your duty being shared. Everyone's doing duty in a marriage and with the kids, and making sure that things are good in so many other regards, that you're thinking of things that are not beneficial really for the sustainment and long-term aspects of the marriage. She has been in a marriage for a while, but it's not something that at this moment, from the way she described it, it's not something that, the issues that she has is something that, in my opinion, will last. It will be something that she will make a decision on and potentially not be content with that decision down the line. So I had to say something, because I looked at it and I thought, this doesn't make sense. It's not like it's like there's no answer per se as to what the good guy should do. You see, if marriage was at a point where most people married without the state, for example, in America, or any kind of certification in this country, where in the UK, where you're married under some form of law, then most men will be like, okay, cool, I'll marry, because at the end of the day, I know if a divorce takes place and if a woman is not feeling to be in a marriage for whatever reason, we can have a sort of clean break. without any kind of, court injunction or any kind of involvement with governments and, the state, for example, to get involved and, mediate and take assets and divide them. Most men will say, okay, I know that that's not involved, for example. I'll just marry, and if we divorce, we divorce. I'll still hopefully take care of the kids, and you do what you have to do. But because marriage is under this state, it gives the men this kind of fear of like, but if I'm doing what's required and I'm doing the best in terms of trying to make sure she's in a decent emotional state, I'm trying to make things happen, in other regards in the home, and I'm doing it. I don't know if I should now go forth with a marriage because of these potential instances after like 7 years or 10 years, because they normally say within like about the year 7 mark, it's said, that that's when sometimes issues can take place in a marriage. You've got to look at it and think, what is the step that a person that is considered good and it has been described as good have to do, especially as a man? What does he have to do? What is the point if you've taken, a step, both of you, to marry? You've decided on each other's character, I will assume. You've seen the actions that match the character. And then now in the marriage, I cannot be myself. What is that? To break up a marriage, to let now duty being shared between you and him for the kids, all because at this moment you're going through a phase that, in my opinion, when you get to a certain age, you'll probably be out of the phase, and you realize from a realistic standpoint that it's important to have a good person, and on top of that, if he's covering all the aspects, I need to do what I need to do for the emotional aspect, because I guarantee this is just a phase. And this is the danger of like of certain marriages in the modern world. Not that there's no candidates, or the candidates, it's slim pickings. No, people are out there. It's just the fact that the mentality towards how we both should be and what we both should be given is not understood. There's like a lack still of an understanding of what men should be generally bringing from a general standpoint. And there's more requirements from women on men in ways where generally it's not supposed to be. It's just an acceptance that, okay, this is what it is. Women have been asking for certain things from an emotional standpoint, or I cannot be myself and I don't know what I am anymore. All of these things, these are all the burdens on men that have just been a thing, and it's been accepted over the years to be a thing, but it's not something that really men should be carrying. They have to make sure other remits within the household is covered. Again, this is not to neglect anyone's emotional well-being, but it's also to look at it as you're going through potentially a phase, and to make a big decision of divorcing, I don't see as it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Men want to, good men would want to be married 100%, but not within certain confines of doing it under the courts and doing it under a legal kind of way. Yes, there are protective measures men can take, but if it gets to a point where, and it's getting to points where men are considered good and there's no real faults, and you still want a divorce after going into a marriage that you should be knowing exactly who each other is, and now you want a divorce because you're not understanding of where you are in terms of who you want to be and how you can't express who you want to be. Crazy. You can't say this makes sense. But it'll be interesting to find out what other people think, because for me, I find it crazy.